My name is Monk Rowe. I'm here at beautiful Hillsdale College with Fred Radke, and I'm very pleased to meet you. And you've already enthralled me with some stories, so you're just going to have to tell them all again.
Oh, I don't know about
I wanted to ask you, when in your youth did you decide that you wanted to be a professional musician?
Well, I wanted to be a trumpet player. You know, that was the first thing I wanted to be. Period.
So the trumpet comes
Period.
before
Anything. Yeah. I was, about 7, and I saw Harry James on television. And I said, that's what I want to play, and that's what I want to do. So, in grammar school, you're supposed to be a year older to get a horn, but, excuse me, we talked to the teacher, and I got a horn from the school, some beat-up old Busher cornet, you know. And I wanted to play, and I started playing in the school band. And then in Oakland, I grew up in Oakland, California. That's my hometown. And there was a famous youth band there called the Weldonians. And it was a 250-piece marching band. And it was very dedicated young musicians from the age of 2 to 18. And outstanding. The older trumpet players were really good, you know, that later on became Doan players. But it was a very militaristic organization, very disciplined. Finally, when you learned your parade routine, and let's say you played third trumpet, you had to audition in front of 3 officers in order to get your parade uniform, your cape and cap. And you had to do the 15-minute routine, marching steps, and you're playing third with nothing else around you. And you were allowed to make 0 mistakes. You made 1 mistake, you didn't get the thing, and come back in 2 weeks.
Would that include the marching part of it?
Oh, absolutely. This was an incredible, when this unit marched down the street, now all these big bands, school bands or something, but this was one of the first ones like that. It was an experience to see. Precision, perfect. You rehearsed, I mean, you were dedicated like 3 or 4 days a week. Saturday, you rehearsed all day from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, marching, doing routines, learning marches. I went from 67th chair to first chair, and later on became the assistant conductor of the band when I was about 14. And so then I left the band, and of course I'm listening to Harry James all the time. I mean, he's my mentor. I'm focused on Harry. And so my teacher says, you know, you're a good enough player, you should join the union. So I joined the union when I was 15, and yes, I auditioned. I had to play all my major scales and play Stardust.
Do you think they would have denied you membership if you couldn't play that well? Because I've heard a couple stories from other musicians.
Well, it all depends where you were. This is San Francisco, Local 6. So I don't know. I mean, later on, I think everybody had audition in those times. And it was, I think, $50 to join the union and $9 a quarter or something. You know? So my teacher was the top trumpet player in San Francisco, Dick Lauder, the first call guy. And so, see, that's the smart thing to do. If you move to a city, I've told students this, you want to go to New York or something, or wherever, find out who the #1 call player is. And you call them and say, hi, this is Fred Radke, I'm a trumpet player, I'm moving to New York because I want to study with you and no one else. And naturally the guy will say, well, I don't teach anymore, I'm busy. And said, okay, well, this is the reason I'm coming to the city. I want to meet you and I want to study with you. So you let that rest for a few days, you call him back again. Finally the guy says, all right, why don't you come by? Boom, there you go. So Dick Lauder gave me a list of all the trumpet players in San Francisco, which there's really good trumpet players. And he says, you call these guys every week. So I remember I had the union book, and I listed out like 10 or 15 trumpet players. And you would get a call every Wednesday afternoon from Fred Radke. Well, after you figure out, I said, when the heck is Fred Radke? Well, he keeps calling me. So and this is strange. Saturday, a lot of times you would get a call to make a gig Saturday night, like 4 o'clock. Somebody gets sick. There's contractors saying, I need a trumpet player. So one night I get a call at 5:30. They said, this is Fred Radke, this is Jack Fisher, who was a big contractor in San Francisco. I got a show and a dance tonight at the Fairmont Hotel. My trumpet player came down with a flu. I need somebody. You come highly recommended from Dick Lauder. So so the talkover is at 7 o'clock. The show's at 8:30. We play from 10 to 1 o'clock, tuxedo, and be there. And I said, okay, what is the show? And all of a sudden, for some reason, I guess my voice, something, he says, how old are you? I said, I just turned 16. Have you ever played a show? I said, no. And he said, well, then I can't use you. I'm sorry. Good luck to you. And I said, wait a minute. I have a question for you. I said, how do you have an opportunity or experience to play a show if no one ever hires you because you haven't played a show? So therefore, how do you do that? So I'm asking you, let me play the show so I get the experience to say that I've played a show so I can get other jobs to play shows and dances. And it's silence. And Jack Fisher says, be there at 7 o'clock. So now I show up there, right? And I get there early. And we're in the room, and there's like 12 musicians, and typical talkover. Okay, we've got a dog act, a singer, a juggler, whatever the heck it was. And they said, okay, the first thing is now we vamp at letter A, we vamp till the act enters the thing, and then when they throw the ball up in the air, we play this chord, and then we did that, and everybody's got their pencil. I'm standing there, and I have the first trumpet book because the other trumpet player isn't there. And I said, who's playing the lead? And they said, so-and-so, or Merv Guthers or somebody. And he says, well, where is he? And he says, I don't know where he is. You take the book. So I'm watching everybody how they're marking their, I have never done this. So I'm saying, well, let's see, watch the little thing. Used to put glasses.
I remember.
Remember, draw glasses to say, look out here. And so I'm just watching these guys do all this. So now it gets like 15 minutes before the show, in walks the trumpet player. God, I'm sorry, I was caught in traffic. And Fisher says, I don't care, that's not an excuse. As you know, professional musicians, you're dead if you're late. Never be tardy, ever. And so he says, I'm sorry. He says, well, where's my music? And he says, here. He said, well, this is the second trumpet book. And he says, that's right, that's what you're playing. Fred's playing lead. Who the hell are you? I said, I'm Fred Radke. And he says, yeah, what do you do? I said, well, obviously, I'm going to play the trumpet. And he says, you're playing lead and I'm playing second? Well, you better be real good. So, like Bobby Shew said in that interview, do you know this guy, Bobby Shew? Yeah. He plays all the high notes. Man, he never misses, yeah. Have you heard his jazz playing? Oh, yeah, he's great. He's something else. But he says, go out to a gig and miss one F. Then they say, you know this guy, Bobby Shew, you know he missed an F? And he says, oh, yeah, I know. Well, it's the same thing. That was the proving ground that night for me.
How did it go?
Perfect. Playing a dog act and playing some chords, and, play Saints Go Marching In or something.
That's a whole part of musicianship that you have to learn on the job. I remember playing for Connie Francis once, and that they had the music in this one particular page with black marker was all covered up. In red marker, it said, play all of this. So you're going, what's the right thing to do here? And you just have to, pay attention.
Well, I'll give you an experience like that. When I joined Harry James, we were in Vegas, with Phil Harris. And so we were playing the same thing every night, right? Then we went out on the road, and the trumpet player before me was bugged. He got fired, which, you know, a lot of guys did before I did because they had I don't know. And this guy took the book, and in those days, it wasn't a condensed book like I carry now, because it was the whole Harry James library. On each side, you had that much music, right? You had your own case. And it's like the Glenn Miller Band carries, those guys carry all their music. I asked the guys, I said, "You guys play all this?" "Oh, yeah." "Well, okay." Well, Harry didn't play, certain things, but they were in the book. This guy shuffled the book. Now, you don't think that isn't kind of rotten? And then, and when Harry James would call up a tune, it would be like, I memorized everything. You'd be playing, and you go, don't be. You had to read his lips. He didn't tell you the number, 1735. If you didn't know the numbers, you better start looking. And then you talk about marks. The guy sitting next to you is jealous because he didn't get the first trumpet chair because he's been there for 2 years and he thinks he should be there. But once you were a third trumpet player, you were always a third trumpet player, and that's where you were going to stay. So now here's a new guy comes in from the Northwest with a tilted bell trumpet. Who the hell is this guy? And then you say, it says start at letter A. No, start at letter D. No, cut to letter C. No, take the coda the first time. Which do you do here? I don't know.
Was there a difference in the salary between the third and the lead
yes.
trumpet guys
yes.
getting
Oh,
more
yes.
bread?
Oh, yes. That's why I was a first trumpet player. That's why I am a first trumpet player. And, well, anyway.
Let me ask you about the relationship between the lead trumpet player and the drummer.
I know I've heard you ask that question, okay? Extremely important. That's the most important. Sorry, saxophone players. The lead trumpet player and the drummer are the whole foundation of a band. A lead trumpet player, even in an orchestra or in the president's band, they set the timbre for the band. The first trumpet player, they set the timbre for the orchestra or for the band. It's extremely important that you think alike. I played with some great drummers, and of course, when I was with Harry, my dear old friend Sonny Payne. Sonny, we played really good together, and to me, Sonny Payne was the best. And there's nobody that played like Sonny Payne, and he would read your mind. He would read Harry's mind. In fact, I was just talking to the drummer here. Sonny, when he'd be playing, he'd be looking at Harry, and he was like reading what Harry was going to do. He'd just be staring at him like this, and if Harry went, bloop, Sonny was right there, just like that. And so a lead trumpet player is laying it down. You got to be right in sync with the drummer. Absolutely.
I have a quote for you from drummer Gregory Caputo. When he played with the Harry James Band.
He's a great guy, Greg.
He said, Fred, having played with Harry James when Sonny Payne was playing the drums, expected no less from me. I had to step up my intensity and kick the band with the forcefulness of a howitzer cannon.
Yeah, I'm famous for drummers. I've become, that's what I've been told. When I was a guest soloist, one of the most important jobs I've ever done in my life, a guest soloist with the president's own Marine band, which was very important to me. And Colonel Fedek, who just retired, by the way, invited me to do the 50th anniversary of Wolf Trap. And so I go in for the rehearsal in Washington, and of course, here's the greatest musicians in the world sitting on this band. I said, I've never seen so many sergeant majors in my life in one place. And the drummer came up to me and he says, I've been waiting for you. I said, what do you mean by that? And he says, oh, I've heard about you, drummers. I said, what have you heard? And he says, well, I've just heard some things. And he was a just great player. And he was with Andy Williams for years. He knew how to play.
It seems like a hard thing to define. Like, does it have a lot to do with the drummer, where he plays his fills and setting up the downbeat?
Yeah.
And you two have to be like
Right.
in sync.
He has to set you up and to get that excitement going, that intensity. Because, I traveled with Leslie Uggams, and I traveled with the King family. They always used to carry, and Jerry McKenzie was a drummer with the Kings. They'd carry a lead trumpet player and a drummer and a conductor, piano. That's the main thing, period. And you had it. That's what most acts carried. That was good. Guys like travel with Robert Goulet as his first trumpet player and so on. Those were really well-paying jobs. My old friend that I knew was Elvis's lead trumpet player. Man, he took care of those guys, and the drummer. That was the main catalyst of traveling, and then you picked up the rest of the orchestra. But you made a very good salary being a first trumpet player for people. Like Tommy Perella was with Vic, they'd go to Florida or something. He always brought Tommy, always brought Joey Preston, his drummer, who was just like Sonny, and his pianist, conductor. And that's what you brought. Those were good jobs to obtain,
Did you have it in the back of your mind that someday you might direct the Harry James Orchestra?
This is so. I'm playing in the East Bay in a nightclub, and they were booking acts like Frank Sinatra Jr., Leslie Dorothy Dandridge, my phone, and a group called the Lancers. There was a vocal quartet. They had done a lot of TV. They were with K-Star, made some hit records, and they were headlining at Harrah's in Tahoe and in Nevada. They were a headlining act. And in those days, Bill Harrah, the lounges were very important. And they would have junkets, for gamblers to go up from the Bay Area at 5 o'clock. You'd go up and get there at 8 o'clock. You'd gamble all night, get up and leave at 8 o'clock in the morning to get back. And that was a big thing. So lounges, you went to work at 1 o'clock in the morning and worked till 5 or 6 in the morning. And Harrah's was Bill Harrah, who was a terrific guy. He had the Lancers. He loved them headliner. He had Louis Prima, Keely Smith, Harry James. So I said, the Lancers came through this nightclub, and I said, and their trumpet player, which they carried, went to go with Stan Kenton as his lead player. And so they're talking about that, and I thought, and I'm 18 at this time. And I said, this is my chance to meet Harry James, because that's all I want. I'm focused on Harry James. In fact, my sister, the other day on my birthday, says, I never forgot you were about 10 years old, and we were in the front room with our parents, and you walked in, you were practicing, and you walked in with your trumpet, and I said, I have decided what I'm going to do. I'm going to be Harry James's first trumpet player. My sister said, you were 10 years old when you said, and I said, and I'm going to do it. My father says, good for you. Okay, all right. So now this is my chance to meet Harry. Well, dummy, naturally, if the Lancers are the headliners at Reno, Harry's not going to be there. He's going to be at Tahoe. So we were never in the same venue. So now time goes on, and the Lancers break up. And one guy went to go write for Lassie for Tom Scott's dad, Nathan Scott, and so on. And the Lancers kind of fell apart. So I said, well, at this time I'm like 21, and I go to Vegas, and I put in my union card, And I really don't know anybody in Vegas, at that time. So one morning I was doing subbing on the Steve Allen show or something, and I go out to the bar, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to get a corned beef sandwich and a beer. This guy next to me has 3 hookers hanging on him, drinking slopping martinis. The guy next to me is having French toast with strawberries and whipped cream, and I'm having a beer and a sandwich, and I look out in the casino and all this stuff going on. I thought, God, this stinks. This really is a lousy way to live. And I thought, I got to get out of here. I can't stand this. So I go over and pick up the phone and call this manager of a lady in Seattle that ran the yacht club, Edmund's Yacht Club. And we had just played there with the Lancers. And she says, if you ever come to Seattle, you call me. I'll hire you. Because he had a band that worked 5 nights a week. So I had her phone number. I called her up, and she says, I'm serious. She says, it's funny you should call, Fred. I'm looking for a band to start next week. How would you like a year contract? I said, really? Okay. You got it. No. I said, I'll be there. So I called the best musicians in Seattle, which are really good players, rhythm section. I get in my car, and I'm thinking, Jesus, I need a place to stay. I didn't think about this. So now I have another friend of mine that lived on Bainbridge Island, and he had this beach house that was right on the beach in Manitoba Beach. And you walk out, and in those days, Bainbridge Island, it was a summer place. Not many people wintered there. And there's Seattle. You're right on Puget Sound, and there's the whole city landscape. So I called this guy up, and I said, I'm thinking of coming to Seattle. I got a gig at the Edmund's Yacht Club for a year, and we're going to do that. And he says, it's funny you should call. He says, we're going to the desert for 6 months. Why don't you come and stay at the house? And I said, well, I can't afford these. No, I just want someone to stay here. Okay. So now I have a pad and a gig. So here I go. I go to Seattle, start working. And naturally, the Lancers were pretty well known. So when I showed up into town to do any extra shows, everybody kind of moved down a chair. They said, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not, but they said, Fred Radke's in town. Everybody, when you went out and won a gig, the guy that used to play lead now moved down. Nothing was said. And so we played the Olympic Hotel, which they had a big showroom, and they had a singer there that had just come from the Johnny Carson show, and she was the longest running act at the Hungry Eye in San Francisco, and she was very well known. She was opera trained, but she was a nightclub singer and very elegant lady, wonderful, just incredible singer. And so her piano player decides to go to Nashville to join somebody, and so she says, well, who am I going to get for my conductor? He says, well, you remember Fred Radke that played opera? She says, I don't want a trumpet player. Are you kidding? So that's my wife, Gina Funes. We've been married going on 58 years. Okay. And so we were starting to work shows together after I left the yacht club. And so we were going to work a convention, and Joe Venuti lived in Seattle, the world's greatest violinist.
So he said.
And so we did these shows together. And so we're driving to Spokane, and he's in the back seat, and he says, you guys are perfect for each other. You should get married. You're perfect. Well, we said, well, we've been talking about it. Oh, you got to get married. Why don't we go elope? So we didn't stop at Spokane. We went to Coeur d'Alene, and we eloped. Now it gets even funnier. We go up to the justice, we get the license, go to the justice of the peace, and of course the justice of the peace is about 350 years old, And he says, well, I'm very sorry. My wife usually plays piano, but she can't play piano because she's ill with the flu. And I said, well, you know who this is? So during the ceremony, I stood at the altar, and Joe Venuti played piano. He was a very good pianist, and Gina sang at my own wedding. Okay, so now we go back to work this big show, and there's about 1,000 people in the ballroom. And Joe Venuti says, tonight, I get to introduce Gina Funes and Fred Radke. They just got married today. And everybody applauds. So Gina comes out and does her thing, and she's sensational, And I mean, really elegant, really something. And so she said, tonight is the first night I'm going to get to introduce my conductor to you as my husband, Mr. Fred. Mr. Fred, she couldn't think of my last name. Well, the Venuti's on the side of Venuti said, Radke. So now time goes on. Gina and I go to Southeast Asia during the war. We do 2 tours over there for private agents. It's just terrible at those days. Thailand and the Philippines. Yeah. And so I came back, and Venuti's in town playing, and with Corky Corcoran, who's a famous saxophone player. So I said, why don't we go down? I've never met Corky. I mean, we know each other. Let's go see Venuti. We haven't seen him for 6 months. So we go down and see him, and hey, love to see you guys. He says, I said, what are you doing, Joe? He said, I'm opening next week with Harry James and Phil Harris in Vegas. Have you ever played with Harry? And Gina says, you have to ask him that. That's all he's ever wanted to do. And Joe says, Harry James doesn't know you? And I said, no. What? And you never played with? I said, Joe, I told you. 2 days later, this is Pee Wee Monty from Harry James. We'd like you to join the band. The first trumpet chair is open, and when are you available? I said, well, I have some commitments. We know that. When will you be available? And then they said, I've never been asked this, and they said, what do you need? What do I need? I'm thinking, well, let me tell you what we're going to pay, offering to pay you, and then we can negotiate it. Well, they came right with a good figure. And not like what Sonny was making, but and then when you went to Vegas, you worked 7 days, so your salary was, really up there because you got time and time and a half. So here I am. Now, my dream come true.
And you were how old?
23. When I joined Harry, I thought, everybody says, oh, isn't this great to be on? I said, I'm going to analyze him. I want to know what makes him tick. What makes him not only a very famous band and very charismatic, and him and Betty Grable were the highest paid movie stars in Hollywood in the early 40s. And what made him be the greatest trumpet player? What makes him tick? So that's how I've approached it. And so one night I'm sitting on the band, and I went through everybody in the band. And everybody was divorced or separated except one guy. And so I had this offer, this job. I said, I've done it. But I love this job. So I called Gina after every show. And I said, we had a new son, 2 years old. Harry helped me buy my house, Mercer Island. And I called Gina up and I said, I think I'm going to leave the band.
I bet she was shocked.
Silence. And she says, why would you want to leave the job that you've always wanted, that you love, and you're doing exactly what you want to do? Why would you do that? And I said, I just think it's time for me to come home. And she says, well, that's going to be your decision, okay? But let me tell you something. Don't you ever mention to me that I made you leave Harry James. That's your decision, and that's your decision alone. So So I went and knocked on Harry's door, and I said, Harry, I think it's time I go home. That's just what I told him. And he looked at me and he says, Fred, you're one of the smart ones. He says, you're the type of guy that doesn't want to end up out here like these guys. I said, well, I've been offered this. And I said, I'm going to start a band at home and do some things. And he says, okay, called Pee Wee, and he says, Fred's leaving the band. I said, I'm giving you 6 weeks. He says, thank you. And he says, I'll make you a deal. You can come back to this band anytime you want. I expect you to come back not just for a week, but to come back. And he says, you don't call the office. Here's my personal phone number, and you call me. Okay? Which is pretty nice. Then he told Pee Wee, he says, anything that Fred needs, any arrangements, send them to me. He can have whatever he wants. He says, just do me a favor, don't give them to anybody else. But you can have whatever I've got. Now, that's which they sent me stuff that I still have today. And now I have the whole library. So that was pretty interesting. And then I went back to the band 3 or 4 times. And Cork would be playing and be having a problem with the trumpet section. Harry'd go down and he says, why don't you get a hold of Fred and see if he can come out and help us out for 3 or 4 days, And then when Harry ever came to the area where you were, you always went to visit him. You never didn't go see him. And one time I was gone with Gina on the road, and some guys went by to see him. Red Kelly was off the band that time. And the first thing Harry says, where's Fred? Is he coming by? You went by to pay your respects to him. That was important to him. So my thing is when I get ready to go on stage and they're introducing the band and I'm standing on and getting ready to enter, I think, boy, complete circle. I take it very seriously. And I think to have the opportunity and to be able to, be in the position that a guy like he occupied is very, very important. I'm very serious about it. And that's what I try to live up to those standards.
Remember George Simon,
Of course.
the writer?
Of course.
He wrote this about Harry. It says, with a vibrato that could easily span the distance from left field to first base.
Okay. You want to know about that?
Yeah.
Connie Condoli summed it up. Now, the book that was written on Harry, Trumpet Blues, I was interviewed by the author, for a week. When that book came out, he called me and apologized. He says, Fred, you were the first individual I interviewed about Harry James that looked at him on a different level, like instead of just funny stories and this stuff happened. But there's something, and that book is good at the beginning, but there's other things in the book. It was like it was the negative part of Harry James instead of the positive parts of what he contributed to jazz trumpet playing, which he was one of the greatest jazz. Nat Pierce says, Harry James is one of the greatest jazz trumpet players that ever lived, man. Yeah, what do you think he did with Benny Goodman? What was that? Was that, a corned beef hash or something? I don't think so. He was a hell of a lead trumpet player and jazz player, did them both. So Connie Condoli, he was asked about the vibrato thing. And you know what Harry told him one time? He says, I play a ballad because I hear my mother, that's the way she would sing it to me. What can you say? Okay? So there is nobody. My thing, I love ballads because I think that really you invite people in to see who you really are when you play a ballad. And Harry played ballads like nobody. Sorry. Him and Clifford.
this was the vibrato he did with
Yeah.
his hand.
Guys do it with their lip or with their hand.
Yeah.
You can do either one.
Okay.
I can, I just like, a lot of people say, God, you play that just like Harry. I said, no, you don't. You don't play it like Harry. Tony Skywell, one of the great trumpet players, Vegas guy, makes my horns. He's an incredible guy. He was with Harry and so on. And Tony told me, he says, nobody plays like Harry, but you know what you do, Fred? You have the spirit of Harry James. You have that spirit. Nobody plays like Harry James, man. Technically anything. I don't care who you are.
What kinds of things might happen with an individual where you would either have to let them go or not call them again?
Do you know who Everett Longstreth is?
Say again?
Do you know who Everett Longstreth is?
No.
Great arranger, great trumpet player, Woody Herman, Berklee School of Music, New England, MIT. Greg Caputo's good friend. That's where I met Greg. Contractor, great trumpet player. And I owe Everett a lot. He's redone a lot of the arrangements and things. And he says, you never yell at a guy. You just don't call him anymore. And if you walked on my bandstand and you're 15 minutes late, oh man, I'm really sorry I'm late, man. You won't believe what I don't want to hear. If you're late, you have an excuse. I don't care what your excuse is. Just don't be late again. If you're drunk on the bandstand, okay, that's cool once. But don't do it again. Don't embarrass me. And even when we were out on the road with the younger band on that 50th anniversary tour, Harry James, Harry never let the band get loose. It wasn't like, man, it was, as soon as it started getting a little too relaxed, he'd pull it together.
How so?
His attitude. Trumpet player when I knew trumpet player, I think. And he missed the E on the end of Shiny Stockings. Ba-da-da, ba-da, whap! And he cracked it, right? Because there's no mistakes. There's no mistakes. Harry walked right back to the trumpet section. He says, guys, we play a physical instrument. I mean, it's a physical instrument, And, you're allowed to make a mistake on my band once. He turned around and walked out.
You've been warned.
See, that's it. Another thing that Harry James did, and I learned this from him too, he signed your paycheck. And sometimes he would hand you your paycheck. And I noticed this too, when we were doing this a lot. When a guy says, thank you for the job, or just grabs it. Harry James would hire an individual that had a great attitude, and maybe not the player that this guy is, but this guy has a lousy attitude, but this guy's got a positive attitude. He'd keep the job. That's what he wanted. And Harry would go through a stage. You would know when to approach him and when not to approach him. Sometimes when he wasn't feeling good. He had, one time we were on the road in Florida, his malaria flared up. He got malaria when he wintered in Texas with a circus band, with his father's band in Beaumont. I think that's where he acquired it. And that's why he never went in the service. He had those things. And one time he was really ill, and he showed up at the gig, and he hadn't been drinking at all, and I caught that. And Corky, I said, uh-oh, now this is the serious Harry James. And I don't know, these guys, man, these two young trumpet players were standing there. Timing was awful. I'll never forgot this. These two guys says, man, you know something? We're playing the same thing. You made me love you. Well, Harry played all of his hit records. That's what the people wanted to do. And then we played what we wanted to do. See, that's the first thing you do. You play, Joe Graydon from Columbia Artists told me this. You have the Harry James Orchestra. You go out and you play every blockbuster. Bap, bap, bap. The people want to hear it. Then you can do what you want to do. Do all the Thad Jones, Ernie Wilkins charts, man, Neil Hefti charts, whatever you want. But you've proven your point. What you've done with the audience, you say, you invited me in, and now you're confident that I'm in your front room now, and now you've accepted me. Now I can do what the heck I want, man. Okay? So here's these guys saying, why are that? And Harry's standing there oiling his valves, and he says, hi, guys. And I'm standing there with Quirk, and Quirk says, look out. So now we're playing this thing, and there's 10,000 people in this arena or something, just for a law enforcement, National Law Enforcement Association or something. And they said, and now Harry James. And he walks up, and people applaud. Harry comes up, and he says, and he always started with a theme, like we do. Cherryberry Bend, and then Don't Be That Way, because that's what Benny opened Carnegie Hall with. We still do that. That's tradition. And it fits. And he walked on the stage and he says, jazz connoisseur. Well, that's one of his favorite Ernie Wilkins charts, right? I hadn't played it yet. I've been on the band a year. I said, and I look at Sonny, I said, jazz connoisseur, what number is that? And he said, I don't know, man. Okay, and then he looked at me and he says, Fred, you're playing lead on this? And I said, yeah. He says, pass it down to the fourth trumpet player. He's one of the guys. Oh. He did that for about 3 songs. And then they were gone the next day. And when Harry used to fire people, he'd say, not very often, but he'd walk up to you and say, go home.
What?
not like, you're fired, get off my bandstand. He'd say, go home.
This is not a question, but an observation. I watched a video of the band with you and took note of the song that had a singer and how the band played the tune and then it modulated for the singer. Not a question. I think it's just a interesting thing because I know it was fairly common for the arrangers to do that. And it was a musically a good decision, sometimes a practical decision.
Yep.
The band sounds better in this key. The singer sings better in this key.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that Harry did that no other band did. See, all the band leaders, like Benny Goodman, artists, they hated singers. I mean, it's as crude as this sounds. This is how they used to think. Get a canary that looks good, put her in front of the piano so it dresses up the band. Have her come up and sing a few things. That's how they thought, right? Okay. So if you stop and think about it, Benny Goodman, introduction, Benny Goodman made the first statement. The singer would sing in the middle, and Benny Goodman would make the final statement at the end. All bands were that way, except Harry. Harry thought, why doesn't the band play an introduction and the singer makes the first statement? I play the middle part, and the singer makes the final statement. He was the first one to do that. That's like when he got Frank Sinatra, and you know that story, how he found him and wanted to change his name and all of that stuff. You know? I tell that on the show, briefly.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, Harry James was the first one to do that. And of course, his long association with Betty Grable, with Helen Forrest. Everybody says, and I knew Connie Haynes, who was his first singer, very well, and I knew Helen. I did some TVs and recordings with her. Everybody says she was the best big band singer ever, and Sinatra said that too.
This has been a fascinating conversation, and I'd like to wrap up with the fact that you have this terrific relationship with Hillsdale College.
Mm-hmm.
It's wonderful to hear that you're working with the students, the trumpet
Mm-hmm.
students.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any words of wisdom that you share with them about trying to, if they express this interest of
Continuing
in music?
That's the music business is a tough thing today, as you know. And I think what I tell anybody, it's all passion. And I think if you're passionate about what you want to do, and you want to be a trumpet player, then follow that passion. And if if you visualize it, you want to look what I visualized. And I have a great wife. She's just great, and I have great children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, and Cocoa Puff, our dog. And great friends. If you're a positive person and leave your ego at the stage door canteen. I love but once again, referring back to Bobby Shue, he says, forget your ego, man. That's as you get older, ego is, that's for children, And I think for students, if they want to pursue that, go for it. Have your passion. You have to have the passion. You have to have the drive. You have to want it bad enough. And then you go for it. And that's what I'd say. This place, Hillsdale College, I've been coming here for 5 or 6 years. I don't know if you've had time just to sit around and observe. The other day, I was sitting on the bench out there, and then I went to the dining room and just sitting there watching students. This is a positive, happy place. Everybody smiles. Everybody's extremely polite. Everybody is friendly. And it's just a positive place to be. And I was watching, just people walking down the street, laughing, talking, arms around each other, shaking hands. In the cafeteria, sit down with a couple other professors, and they engaged in doing, very important conversations. It's just a positive place. And I think that a student that goes here who's very, privileged to do so, to have the opportunity to come and get this education at this institution, they're going to leave here with a positive driving force and driving attitude to do what they want to do. I really feel that. And I
sensed that as well, and I was at the dining hall myself, and there was a table behind me of fellas. They could have been on the football team if they have one.
Oh, yeah,
but all
they
of
do.
a sudden they broke into a piece from an opera. They were singing opera. Not well,
Of course.
but with such joy and verve that I said, well, what a nice thing to hear in the dining hall.
Yeah, sure. I know. I'm telling you, this. I was involved with the University of Washington for some years, and then compared to this, well, you're involved with the university.
Yeah.
It's just a positive. Everybody's here because they want to be here. It's not because mommy and daddy is sending them to school to learn how to drink beer. You know, they're here because they want to learn, and they want to learn positive life values. And that comes from the leadership too, because the leadership of the school is something else. And Dr. Arn, Larry, is just an incredible, I don't know if you've met him, but he's a pretty incredible man. He's a very positive person, and that's what he portrays in this place, you know. And just good people, enjoyable to be here. And Chris is great too, our jazz guy.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time, Fred. And you know what? I think you should become a professional musician. Best of luck with your future endeavors. And
Good, thank
I look
you.
forward to hearing you play the trumpet.
So great to be with you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.